clearly see those figures for Afghanistan. Almost 1 out of 2 persons killed by terrorism fell in Afghanistan by 2 groups. The Taliban, 38% of global casualties, and also by the Khorasan chapter of Islamic State that completes this to almost 50% of all casualties falling all over the world. I think it's destabilization in this country. That's what they are aiming for. They want to destabilize and undermine the government that is in place. We have seen elections in the past year that has, of course, driven their ambition to influence. But it's clear that all the factors that can lead to terrorism are still present in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is also at the lowest level on the Global Peace Index and also on a positive peace index. So we clearly see low levels of peacefulness, but also low investment in the creation of a more stable and peaceful society. So I guess all those factors are leading to more violence in this country. It's just potential that is present and a window of opportunity to use it. So we saw that 19 countries have been impacted by far-right terrorism. Over the past 4 years, we saw an increase of 320% in the figures of casualties and the number of attacks also. So there is a clear revolution there, and even if the figures of the amount of people who got killed and the figures of the amount of attacks are still low compared to other forms of terrorism, I think this steep evolution is something we need to follow. What we have also seen over the past years is that more and more mass shooting are now considered being terrorist attacks. We clearly see an increase in politically motivated types of violence, politically motivated types of terrorism. So this is really disturbing. We see a clear evolution of this type of violence, and we need to keep a close eye on this. Far-right terrorism is a form of political terrorism or political activism, and it can be compared to far-left terrorism. The only difference that we saw between both movements is that far-left terrorism would create much more incidents, but was not so effective in the amount of casualties produced than far-right terrorism. So that's what we see. We see a clear evolution in the amount of politically motivated acts of terrorism also over the past years. When we say that it is related to narrative, is because we do not see at the moment large terrorist groups organized around the ideology of far-right extremism. And therefore, it's only the narrative that is going to incite people to use violence to attain those political goals that are set for themselves by the narrative. Well, we clearly saw that in both conflicts, the terrorist groups surprised the security services by using another tactique to target. I would say that the efforts of security and intelligence services were not on female perpetrators, and therefore they have identified this as another window of opportunity to have a larger impact. So we saw this increase in numbers. 80% of those attacks were perpetrated by Boko Haram. The security services, both in Afghanistan, but especially in Nigeria, have already reacted, and we have seen that the impact of this type of female terrorists perpetrating attacks has also decreased. So it's clearly another initiative taken by a terrorist group that always tries to have the effect of surprise to security and intelligence services. Well, I would say the opposition between the decrease in the impact by 15%, overall more than 50% over the past 4 years, linked to the spread of the phenomenon of terrorism. And we have seen that 71 countries have been affected by terrorism with at least 1 death. So we see a decrease in the impact, but an increase in the spread of the phenomenon. So I think that's really interesting in this year's index. And the second thing is, of course, clearly Afghanistan being number 1 and the impact of terrorism in this country. And the third one is this emergence or the continued emergence of a phenomenon of far-right terrorism.